The desert stretched endlessly, a sea of golden dunes rippling beneath the brutal sun. Each wave of sand shimmered like molten fire, and the heat bent the horizon into illusions that danced and teased the weary traveler. Leela pulled the sheer scarf tighter over her face, shielding her lips and nose from the biting wind that carried grains sharp as glass. She had wandered farther than she intended, chasing the promise of solitude, but now the desert was testing her resolve. Her horse, a lean bay stallion named Zephyr, plodded forward with stubborn determination. His flanks gleamed with sweat, his breath heavy. Leela leaned low against his neck, urging him on with a whisper. Somewhere ahead, she told herself, there had to be shade, an outcropping of rock, a spring, a single palm tree offering a moment's reprieve. Hours passed. The sun sank lower, softening from burning white to molten amber, and the air cooled just enough to trick her body into hope. That was when she saw it, a shimmer that wasn't a mirage, at least not entirely. A grove of palms rose against the horizon, their fronds dark against the fiery sky. Between them glistened a mirror of water, impossibly blue, a jewel dropped into the desert's throat. Leela blinked hard, her heart racing. It could still be a trick. But as Zephyr carried her closer, the smell of wet earth and sweet palm fruit reached her nostrils, unmistakable. Relief surged so strongly it felt like desire, a hunger in her chest. She pressed her heels into Zephyr's sides, urging him into a trot, and soon she was there, at the edge of the oasis. The water sparkled in the fading light, ringed by soft grasses and flowering shrubs. Birds darted above, their wings catching fire in the sunset. Leela dismounted, her legs trembling with exhaustion, and led Zephyr to the water's edge. He plunged his muzzle into the pool greedily. She dropped to her knees, cupping her hands, drinking until coolness ran down her chin and neck. The sensation was almost indecent in its pleasure. She was about to collapse onto the grass when she felt it a presence. Leela froze, her skin tightening as though the desert's chill had returned. Slowly, she turned her head. He stood on the opposite side of the pool, half hidden in the palm shadows. Tall, broad-shouldered, his silhouette commanded the space like a phantom conjured from the desert itself. A burnous of dark cloth draped over him, but the setting sun revealed the hard planes of his face, the glint of sharp eyes studying her with an intensity that made her throat dry. For a long moment, neither moved. Only the whisper of wind and the ripple of water broke the silence. "You are far from the caravan routes," the man finally said, his voice deep, rich, carrying across the water as though it had waited centuries to reach her. Leela's lips parted, but words tangled in her throat. He stepped forward, and the light caught his features fully, a strong jaw dusted with dark stubble, skin kissed by sun, and eyes like amber glass lit from within. He was beautiful in the way a storm is beautiful, dangerous, irresistible. I was traveling," she managed, steadying her breath. "I lost my way." The man circled the pool slowly, deliberate in each step. His gaze never left hers, and Leela felt it like a hand on her skin, tracing paths she had not invited yet did not want to stop. "This oasis is not marked on any maps," he said. "It is said only those meant to find it, do." The words coiled around her, half prophecy, half seduction. She rose to her feet, brushing sand from her skirts, and met his gaze with more courage than she felt. "And you?" she asked softly. "Were you meant to find me here?" The corner of his mouth curved not quite a smile, but a promise. The air between them thickened, charged like the stillness before a storm. The desert had delivered her to water, but something told Leela the true danger, the true temptation, was now standing a breath away. The oasis glowed in the twilight, its water now silver under the first rising stars. Leela could still feel the man's gaze on her, like fire grazing her skin. He had closed the distance, his movements unhurried, confident, as though the desert itself had shaped him to dominate any space he entered. Layla's fingers curled at her sides, torn between caution and an inexplicable pull toward him. She had grown up around men hardened by sand and sun, traders, riders, wanderers, but none of them carried this strange gravity. He did not look merely like a man who survived the desert. He looked like he belonged to it. "Who are you?" she asked finally, her voice sharper than she intended. His eyes, golden even in the dim light, studied her. He paused before answering, as though weighing how much to reveal. "A guardian," he said at last. "Of this place? Of what lies beyond it?" Leela raised a brow. "And what lies beyond?" His lips curved slightly, a shadow of amusement. "Perhaps something you should not yet know." The cryptic answer should have unsettled her, but instead it drew her deeper into curiosity. She stepped closer, the cool grass brushing her ankles. "If you guard this place, why let me drink from your water?" He tilted his head. "Because you were meant to." The words again meant. As if fate had woven this encounter long before she had lost her way. The thought sent a shiver through her, not of fear but of awareness. The air between them seemed alive, charged with invisible threads binding their gazes together. She tried to steady herself by busying her hands. She loosened Zephyr's saddle, letting the stallion graze freely on the grasses. But the stranger's presence lingered, filling every corner of her attention. When she finally looked back at him, he had discarded his burnous and was crouched by the water, cupping it to his lips. The muscles of his arms flexed beneath his tunic, smooth strength honed by labor and survival. Leela realized she was staring too long. She looked away, but heat already flushed her cheeks. "You should rest," he said, his tone quieter now, less like a challenge and more like a command wrapped in care. "The desert is unforgiving. Tomorrow will demand strength." Layla's instinct was to resist. She was not a woman used to orders. Yet the suggestion carried an intimacy, as though he had already taken responsibility for her well-being. Against her own stubbornness, she nodded. She spread a woven blanket she carried in her pack beneath one of the palms, sinking into its folds. The oasis hummed with live crickets, rustling leaves, the occasional splash of fish in the pool. But her awareness kept circling back to him. He had taken a seat across from her, leaning back against a palm trunk, his gaze never fully leaving her. "Do you always watch strangers this way?" she asked, trying to mask her unease with a spark of humor. His reply came without hesitation. "Only the ones who don't feel like strangers." The words struck her deeper than she expected. A slow heat unfurled inside her, heavy and delicious. She shifted on the blanket, fingers brushing the edge, wishing they could brush his hand instead. The night deepened, stars blazing above them like shards of crystal. Leela lay down at last, pulling the scarf from her hair so her curls spilled free onto the blanket. She closed her eyes, willing sleep to come, but every sound reminded her of his nearness, the soft scrape of his movement, the rhythm of his breath. When she dared to peek, she found him watching the sky, his profile carved in silver by moonlight. He was striking in a way that unsettled her heartbeat. She wanted to know his name, his story, the secrets hidden behind that calm exterior. But more than anything, she wanted to know how his touch would feel. Leela turned back onto her side, facing him across the pool. Their eyes met, unplanned, and the moment stretched long. He did not smile. Neither did she. But something passed between them, undeniable, a recognition that neither could deny. The desert had brought her to water. The night had brought her to him. And though no words were spoken, Leela understood, this was only the beginning. The desert night was not silent. It breathed with whispers the rustle of palm fronds, the splash of unseen creatures in the water, the low hum of life hidden from the day's burning eye. Yet for Leela, all sound faded beneath the weight of her awareness of him. She had tried to rest. She had shifted, turned, adjusted the folds of her blanket. But sleep refused her, denied by the heat coiling low in her body and the fire of his gaze that lingered in her thoughts. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the amber of his eyes, the strength in his arms, the way his lips curved when he said words that felt half like prophecy, half like temptation. Finally, she rose. The air was cooler now, a soft breeze stirring the grasses. The moon painted the oasis in silver, the water glowing faintly as though it drank light from the heavens. Leela walked toward the pool, her bare feet silent against the earth. She let the scarf slip from her shoulders, her thin tunic clinging to her from the earlier heat. She knelt, dipping her hands into the water. It was cool, deliciously so, trickling down her wrists, wetting her skin. She splashed it gently against her face, letting droplets trail down her throat, her collarbone. A sigh escaped her lips before she could stop it, soft and intimate. "You cannot sleep." His voice came from the shadows. She startled, but not with fear. It was more like the thrill of being caught in a secret desire. She turned her head and found him standing only a few steps away, moonlight outlining the sharp lines of his body. He had shed his outer robe, wearing only a thin tunic and loose trousers. The fabric clung to him in the humid night, and Layla's eyes betrayed her, tracing the breadth of his chest, the narrow line of his waist. "No," she admitted softly. "I cannot." He stepped closer, slow as if approaching a wild creature that might bolt. Yet it was she who felt like the hunted one, her pulse quickening with every move he made. "The desert does this," he murmured. "It stirs what lies buried. It strips away pretense. Out here, only truth survives." Layla's lips parted, but no words came. His meaning was clear. She felt it in her bones, in the heat that rose unbidden inside her. The distance between them dissolved. He stood at the edge of the pool now, looking down at her. She tilted her face up, meeting his gaze, and for a moment neither moved. The air thickened, heavy with anticipation. Then he crouched, his hand reaching to brush a strand of damp hair from her cheek. His fingers lingered, tracing the curve of her jaw, the corner of her mouth. The touch was gentle, yet it carried a weight that made her knees weaken. "You should not be here," he whispered, though his hand betrayed him, sliding lower, grazing her throat. "Then why don't you send me away?" she whispered back. His eyes flared, molten in the moonlight. "Because I cannot." The confession hung between them, raw and dangerous. Layla's breath shivered in her chest. Her hand rose almost of its own accord, pressing against his chest. She felt the steady thrum of his heart beneath her palm, powerful, insistent, as though it echoed her own. Their faces drew closer, pulled by a gravity neither could fight. His lips hovered a breath from hers, the faint heat of his mouth brushing against her skin. For a suspended heartbeat, they hesitated, two fates trembling on the edge of collision. Then the desert itself seemed to sigh, and their mouths met. The kiss was not tentative. It was deep, claiming, a rush of heat that seared through her veins. His hand cupped the back of her neck, holding her as though afraid she might vanish with the night wind. She pressed closer, surrendering to the hunger that had been building since she first saw him. When they broke apart, gasping, his forehead rested against hers. "This is madness," he said, voice ragged. "Then let the desert drive us mad," she replied, her fingers curling into his tunic. The water lapped softly beside them, the only witness to the fire that had ignited. Neither spoke again. They didn't need to. The oasis had become more than refuge, it had become a crucible, where desire burned hotter than the desert sun. And Leela knew, with an aching certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again. The night dissolved into fragments of touch and stolen breath, until exhaustion finally claimed them both. When dawn came, it arrived gently, golden light filtering through the palm fronds, warming the cool earth. Leela stirred on her blanket, her body aching in the sweetest way, her lips still tingling with the memory of his kiss. For a moment, she wondered if it had all been a dream. But when she turned her head, she saw him. The stranger sat at the edge of the pool, sharpening a curved dagger on a flat stone. His movements were measured, precise, and the morning light carved his figure in shades of bronze and shadow. She sat up, adjusting her scarf over her shoulders. "Do you always polish steel at sunrise?" she asked, her voice still husky with sleep. His mouth curved faintly. "Do you always ask questions before water touches your lips?" Despite herself, she smiled. Rising, she walked to the pool and knelt, drinking deeply. When she looked back, his eyes were on her, not merely watching, but studying, as though she were a mystery to be unraveled. "You still haven't told me your name," she said. He paused, testing the blade's edge with his thumb. "Qasim." The word settled into her chest like a secret revealed. "Qasim," she repeated softly, tasting it. He glanced at her then, something unreadable flickering in his gaze, as though hearing his own name on her lips stirred something dangerous. They ate together, dates plucked from the palms, dried meat from his pack. Leela noticed how little he consumed, as though he needed almost nothing to sustain himself. She wanted to ask more, where he came from, why he lived alone in a place so hidden, but each time she tried, his answers turned vague, evasive. Finally, frustration overcame her curiosity. "You say you are a guardian," she pressed. "Guardian of what? This water? These trees? Or something you cannot name?" Qasim's gaze sharpened. For the first time, she felt the full weight of his authority. "There are things in this desert that men are not meant to touch. This oasis is one of them. It calls only to those fated. And those who find it," he trailed off, his jaw tightening. "What of them?" she demanded. "They are changed." A chill pricked her skin despite the growing heat of day. "Changed how?" Qasim looked away, his eyes narrowing toward the horizon, where dunes rose like waves of a golden sea. "Some are destroyed. Some, reborn." Leela swallowed. His words tangled in her mind, half warning, half prophecy. But instead of fear, a strange exhilaration coursed through her. She had not come here seeking destiny, yet something in her bones whispered that she belonged to whatever story this oasis concealed. The day unfolded slowly. Qasim showed her where the palms bore the sweetest fruit, where the sand gave way to hidden springs, where medicinal herbs grew in the shade of stones. His knowledge of the land was vast, intimate, as though he had lived 100 lifetimes beneath these skies. She listened, absorbing every detail, but her eyes strayed often to the lines of his body, the quiet strength in his movements. By midday, the heat pressed down relentlessly. They retreated to the deep shade, where Qasim poured water over her wrists and neck to cool her. His hands lingered, firm yet careful, and every brush of his skin against hers felt like fire disguised as mercy. "You tempt me," he murmured at one point, so low she almost doubted she heard it. She met his gaze, steady and unflinching. "And do you resist?" For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Then his jaw flexed, and he withdrew his hand, stepping back as though distance could save him. "There are rules," he said. "Rules," she echoed, the word almost a taunt. "And what if I choose to break them?" Qasim's eyes darkened, desire and conflict battling within them. He said nothing, but his silence was louder than words. That night, after the sun bled into the dunes and the stars returned in their brilliance, Leela lay awake once more. The oasis no longer felt like a simple refuge. It was alive, pulsing with secrets, humming with unseen power. And Qasim, guardian, enigma, temptation, was at the center of it all. She turned her head toward where he kept watch at the water's edge, his silhouette outlined against the glowing pool. He looked untouchable, carved from the desert itself. Yet she knew, with the memory of his kiss still burning in her mouth, that he was not untouchable at all. And she vowed, silently, that she would uncover every secret he tried to guard. Even if it meant losing herself to the desert's fire. The following day dawned hotter than before, the sky a clear sheet of fire that promised no mercy. Even the palms seemed to bow beneath the weight of the sun. Leela woke restless, her body caught between exhaustion and the lingering spark of Qasim's nearness. She had dreamed of him, dreams of lips, hands, and whispered promises that vanished the moment she opened her eyes. But the fire did not fade. Qasim was already awake, standing at the pool's edge with his dagger drawn. He carved symbols into the sand, swift and practiced strokes that formed patterns she did not understand. She watched him silently for a time, struck by the intensity etched in his face. He looked less like a man and more like a vessel for something ancient, something she could not name. "What are you writing?" she asked finally. He did not turn. "Not writing. Binding." Her brow furrowed. "Binding what?" Qasim looked over his shoulder then, his eyes hard as amber stone. "The desert is alive, Leela. The water you drink, the shade you rest beneath, none of it is passive. It stirs. It hungers. I bind it, so it does not take more than it should." His words unsettled her, yet fascination curled around her fear. She approached, kneeling beside the symbols. The carvings were intricate, spirals within spirals, edges sharp like daggers. She reached out, almost touching, only for his hand to shoot out, grasping her wrist. "Do not," he warned, voice low and dangerous. "These marks are not for your skin." Her pulse jumped at the sudden heat of his grip. His hand wrapped firm around her wrist, not cruel, but unyielding. For a moment, the tension between warning and desire shimmered hotter than the sun above. Leela met his gaze steadily. "You guard this place with such ferocity, yet you kissed me as though you wanted nothing guarded at all." The words struck him. She saw it in the way his jaw clenched, in the flicker of conflict across his features. Slowly, he released her wrist, though his fingers trailed her skin a fraction longer than necessary. "You should not remind me of that," he murmured. "Why?" she pressed, emboldened. "Because you'll do it again." Silence stretched between them, taut as a bowstring. His breath was shallow, his eyes locked on hers. And then, as though retreat was his only defense, he stood and turned away. But Leela was not retreating. She rose too, following him into the palms. They walked in silence until the grove thinned, revealing an arch of stone rising from the sand like a gateway to another world. Beneath it, half hidden by vines, shimmered another pool, smaller, darker, its waters black as obsidian. Leela stopped short. The air here felt heavier, thick with unseen weight. Another spring. Qasim's voice was sharp. Not a spring. A well. The heart of the oasis. She stepped closer, drawn by something she could not resist. The water was so still it reflected her face perfectly, her eyes wide, her lips parted. Yet as she leaned in, the reflection shifted. For a heartbeat, it was not her own face but another woman's eyes burning, hair wild, a smile that promised ruin. Leela jerked back, her heart slamming in her chest. What was that? Qasim seized her shoulders, holding her still. The oasis shows you what you desire, and what you fear. That is why I guard it. That is why no one must linger here too long. Her breath came fast. The vision had unsettled her, yes, but it had also awakened something deep, something raw. The woman she had seen was not her, but perhaps it was who she might become if she gave in fully to the fire already stirring inside her. Qasim must have seen the hunger in her eyes, because his grip on her tightened. Leela, listen to me. This place will tempt you. It will whisper promises in your blood. But if you give yourself to it, his voice broke for the first time. You may never return. Her lips parted, a tremor of defiance in her voice. And if I don't want to return? His expression darkened with desire and fear entwined. His thumb brushed unconsciously along her collarbone, the touch betraying his words. Then it will consume you. And I with you. The air thickened, the silence alive with everything unsaid. The oasis shimmered around them, whispering from the black water, urging, daring. And Leela knew she had already begun to fall. That night, the oasis did not rest. Leela lay on her blanket, her eyes shut but her mind ablaze. She could hear the water lapping softly, though no wind stirred it. The palms whispered in tones too deliberate to be chance, as if the grove itself conspired. And in her chest burned a restless hunger that no cool breeze could soothe. Sleep dragged her eventually, but it was no mercy. She dreamed of the black pool, the well beneath the arch of stone. In the dream, she stood on its edge, her reflection shifting like liquid fire. It wasn't her face staring back but a woman crowned in desert light, her body draped in silks that shimmered like the dunes at dawn. Her smile was wicked, her eyes ablaze. And Qasim knelt before her, bound, his lips at her hand as though he belonged to her completely. Leela startled awake, sweat slicking her skin. Her breath came ragged, her body trembling with both dread and desire. The vision clung to her like a veil she could not tear away. And then she realized Qasim was gone. Panic spiked. She rose, scanning the oasis. The pool shimmered silver, the palms stood like sentinels but no figure sat at the water's edge where he always kept watch. Her feet carried her swiftly through the grove, toward the stone arch. And there he was. Qasim knelt beside the black pool, his dagger in the sand beside him, his hands pressed to the earth as though in prayer. Words poured from his lips in a language older than she could grasp, harsh and lyrical all at once. The water responded, ripples radiated from its center, pulsing in rhythm with his voice. Leela froze, half in awe, half in fear. The vision from her dream echoed too closely. The pool seemed alive, listening, answering. Qasim, she whispered. His chant broke. His head whipped up, eyes wide and burning. For a heartbeat, she swore they glowed. He rose swiftly, closing the space between them. His hands gripped her arms, harder than before. "You should not be here," he said, voice ragged, as if torn between fury and desperation. "Why?" she challenged, breathless. "What are you doing? What is this place to you?" He released her suddenly, as though afraid he might harm her if he held on. He turned away, dragging a hand through his hair. "The Oasis is bound to me," he said finally. "My blood, my life tied to it. If I fail to guard it, if I falter," he gestured to the pool, where shadows still swirled beneath the surface. "It devours everything." Layla's heart pounded. The words should have terrified her. Yet instead, she stepped closer. "And what of me? Why am I here? Why did it call me?" Qasim looked at her then, raw anguish in his eyes. "Because you are temptation. The Oasis tests me through you." His voice broke lower. "And I am failing." The admission shook her. She felt the truth of it in every brush of his gaze, every inch of distance he tried and failed to keep. He wanted her desperately, ruinously. Leela raised a trembling hand and placed it against his chest. His heart hammered beneath her palm, wild as her own. "Then let us fail together," she whispered. His resolve shattered. He seized her face in his hands, his mouth crashing onto hers. The kiss was deeper than the first, frantic, consuming. His body pressed against hers, pinning her to the cool stone arch. She melted into him, surrendering to the fire that had been building since the desert first threw them together. The Oasis responded. The black pool rippled violently, light flaring across its surface. The palms rustled in a frenzy, as though the entire grove exhaled with their passion. When they broke apart, gasping, Qasim's forehead rested against hers, sweat beading his brow. "You don't understand," he said hoarsely. "If we give in fully, it binds us. Forever. No escape." Leela searched his eyes, her body trembling with both terror and longing. "Then bind me," she breathed. "Let the desert claim us both." The words hung like a vow, dangerous and irrevocable. And as the night deepened, the Oasis whispered louder, the water glowing like liquid fire ready to seal whatever fate they chose. The night held its breath. The palms shivered though no wind moved them, the pool glowed as if lit from beneath by some hidden fire. Leela stood with Qasim under the stone arch, her pulse a drum beat echoing the restless water. His warning still burned in her ears: if we give in fully, it binds us forever. But her body, her heart, every trembling breath of her soul demanded him. "Qasim," she whispered, her fingers curling into his tunic, "stop fighting what's already chosen." He searched her face, anguish warring with desire. His hand cradled her jaw, his thumb brushing her lips as though memorizing her before she vanished. "You don't know what you ask. Once begun, there is no undoing. We will belong not only to each other, but to this place. To the desert itself." Layla's throat tightened. Perhaps she should have been afraid. But instead, a wild exhilaration bloomed inside her, fierce as a flame starved of air. "Then let the desert have us," she breathed. Something broke in him. The restraint, the careful distance, the rules he clung to, they all shattered. He kissed her with a hunger that stole her breath, his hands gripping her waist, pulling her against him as if the world itself might try to tear her away. She clung back, her body alive with fire, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. The black pool answered. Its waters surged upward, splashing over the stone, glowing brighter than the moon. Symbols carved into the sand lit with silver fire, spirals and runes burning alive. The oasis roared with whispers, voices overlapping, ancient and unearthly, yet Leela understood them in her bones. Yes. 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 Qasim tore his lips from hers, gasping, his eyes glowing faintly now, amber ignited with something more than human. It has begun, he said hoarsely. Leela turned toward the pool. The water no longer reflected her face. Instead, she saw herself draped in flowing silks, eyes blazing with the same fire she had glimpsed in her dreams. At her side stood Qasim, not merely guardian but consort, their hands entwined, their bodies crowned by the desert's eternal flame. Her chest heaved. The vision wasn't just a trick, it was a promise. The pool surged again, and suddenly a force like heat and water combined wrapped around them both. It dragged at her, pulling her into the circle of Qasim's arms. She cried out, but his grip only tightened. "Do not fear," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "I am with you. Always." The force sank into her skin, rushing through her veins. It burned and cooled all at once, filling every crevice of her body with liquid light. She gasped, arching against Qasim as the sensation overwhelmed her, pleasure, pain, ecstasy, terror all entwined. And then it was done. The pool stilled. The whispers faded. The oasis exhaled, its frenzy quieting into a hum like a heartbeat deep in the earth. Leela staggered, but Qasim held her steady. She looked up into his eyes and saw herself mirrored there. Not just as she was, but as something more. Bound. Claimed. Alive with a fire that would never fade. "It has claimed us," Qasim said, voice reverent, almost broken. "You are part of it now. Part of me." Leela touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his cheek, the stubble rough against her fingertips. "And you are part of me," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her limbs. The word sealed them. Not an oath of chains, but of choice. Of surrender to something larger than themselves. The desert night stretched endless around them, dunes shimmering under starlight, the oasis glowing faintly like a jewel set in the sand. And within that circle of palms and water, Leela and Qasim stood bound not by fear, not by accident, but by desire and destiny entwined. She leaned her head against his chest, hearing the steady beat of his heart. For the first time since she had wandered lost into the dunes, she felt not like a traveler adrift, but like a queen crowned by fire, chosen by the desert itself. "Forever," she whispered. His arms tightened around her. "Forever." And as the oasis whispered once more soft, satisfied, the desert embraced its new guardians, lovers sealed in fire and water, claimed by the endless sands.